USCHO.com.
Welcome to the USCHO Frozen Four live podcast for Friday at the Frozen Four. We're live at Harpoon Harry's Crab House in Tampa, just a short walk from Amalie Arena, where it's not just a restaurant, it's an adventure. Harpoon Harry's serving great seafood, sushi, and steak. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. An adventure today, right?
Well, it has been a little bit. I mean, Friday's always a fun day. You know, I remember Jerry York making a ton of national title games. He always used the same expression: it's the best practice of the year because it's the last one, and you know that means you're playing a national championship game. So talking to the coaches and some of the players today, I mean, it did feel like they're loose. Especially Minnesota, they really felt loose today. That was the one team that I was kind of really impressed with how loose they were. Quinnipiac, I'm not saying they were tight. They just weren't as loose as Minnesota was.
I think that comes to being here before.
Probably.
I mean, last year, most of that team's been here. So I really believe I said it on the Twitter tease for today. Today, for me, was about the 3 Ps. Practice, pool, party.
Well, you got 2 out of 3 down.
Yes, and the USCHO party's tonight, so that'll be really neat because there'll be all the coaches and people like that. But when you go over to practice, you saw a little bit. Minnesota close their practice, which is very, very uncharacteristic.
And clarify, close it to the media.
Yeah.
I mean, all Friday practices are closed to the public. You're not allowed to come in. But the media, this is Frozen Four number 22 for me as a member of the media. I've never seen a Friday practice where they literally wouldn't let anybody inside the doors. I mean, we had a door right next to our press room that you couldn't walk through.
Yeah.
There was security.
So practice was closed, so it became media lunch, which I was looking forward to the practice, actually. Really, I talked to Scotty Sandlin, and Scott, obviously, at Minnesota Duluth, is their on the committee as their host. He watched their practice in Fargo, and they were going to do the exact same thing today, which was 15 to 20 minutes of just getting their legs moving a little bit, and then working on one thing that they need to do better against the team that they're playing, and then end with the small game. So that was going to be about a 15-minute. Quinnipiac's was a little bit more from what I understand. I didn't stay and watch because the first one was closed. It went a little bit longer, but they had a later game. When you have a later game, you need to recover a little bit. I bumped into actually walking down the stairs out of the building. Quinnipiac was doing their post-game stretch. And like you said, you got to practice on this day. When you can stretch after the game, you're preparing for the next game, which means you're still going.
Yeah. And
then, obviously, the pool, the weather was unbelievable today. So we had, I'm a little bit red.
Your face proves it.
Yeah, a little bit red, but it is what it is. And USCHO party tonight should be fun. So that was my 3 Ps of the day.
Hey, if you're a coach, I know this is not a knock. Not everybody gets to a Frozen Four, but you've gone through these tournaments, Atlantic hockey tournaments and stuff like that. And I guess it's different because you don't have the off day in between. But when you're are there a lot of things that you can even work on at this point of the year, or are you really just trying to get guys just zeroed in, focused in?
I think the old saying, "The hay is in the barn." Yeah, and I mean that's a Frank Serratoriism. The hay is in the barn. You've done your work.
I think he used that on me last night.
You've done all of the work. You've done everything you could do, and now it's just about making sure that you're prepared to. You really want to feel good today. Like you feel good because you're there, but you don't want to. It's very low key. It's very energetic because you are playing for a national championship. And I think, like I said, maybe a little bit more of the looseness of Minnesota. Within the media and within around was because they've been there. But closing the practice, the media kind of contradicts it a little bit. And if I'm working on one thing against Quinnipiac, I'm working on how to beat the dreaded 131/113.
I want to ask you.
Loves that he loves that he is coined 113, or maybe thinks he has.
So I want to ask you about that. I really expected, since we knew that Quinnipiac was going to do that. I really expected to see Michigan try to do something to counter that. But I didn't see dump and chase from them. They still tried to do their own carrying it up through center ice, and it wasn't working.
The turnover numbers for Michigan last night were enormous.
But I think if you saw them want the goal that Fantilli scored, they put the puck behind the D, and they went and they forechecked, and they didn't retrieve it right away, but they created a turnover, which then got mistakes. Luke Hughes to kind of walk around the outside and hit Fantilli back with a cross-ice pass. And that was the thing, so I was sitting with, I don't even remember who I was sitting with at that point.
Myself and Jess Myers.
Yeah, at that point. And we just kept saying they need to put, I sat with a different person. I don't have a press box seat, so I sat with somebody different every period, but they needed to keep putting pucks below the goal line. If you listen to the press conference today, Logan Cooley talked about that, making sure that we get pucks behind them and get them deep. It was almost like Michigan, they would try to dump it sometimes, and they didn't know how. They didn't know the angle to put it below the goal line softly where it stayed away from the goalie, or it just wasn't natural to them.
The other thing, too, on the other side of that, I asked Bob Moscow, was he concerned about the 1-1-3 or the 1-3-1 or the whatever you want to call it, the neutral zone defense of Quinnipiac? He said he was more concerned about the fact that Quinnipiac turned the Michigan defense so much, and that they were playing below the defense. They did a great job of getting the pucks deep themselves. So maybe he's just trying to ignore that question because he knows it's going to be one of the biggest challenges his team faces tomorrow night. But he really was expressly interested in talking about the fact that Quinnipiac generated so much, and I think that it might be a little bit more difficult against Minnesota. I think Minnesota's D is just a little bit more responsible. They don't get thrown off. Listen, that's 5-2 is the final in that game. There's an empty netter. There's a late weird goal that kind of ramps up off a stick, makes it 4-2. But that game, and it's much like the Minnesota game, could have been lopsided early.
They were the exact same games.
Yeah, they really were. It could have been 5-2. I think it was 2-1, and I think that Quinnipiac had about 4 grade A's that Portillo had to make fantastic saves on.
He was their best player.
He was, which is ironic because he had 2 goals go in off of his skate from behind the net, and he had one that everybody just kind of questioned. I think, like I just said, I think it ramped up off a stick as the puck was being released. But it's one of those situations where he was saving their bacon. But Quinnipiac, just like we had said it in the Boston University Minnesota game, BU could have been down 5-1 at the end of the first period. I thought by the midway point of the second game, Michigan could have been down 5-1.
So Ed and I talked. We did the hits in between periods, and we would talk for a couple minutes. And I came out of the second period, and it was really weird because remember the first period of conversation was about it was 2-1 that both teams should be happy. One, Quinnipiac's played really well. They've got the lead, and they've scored on their chances, but they were happy and Michigan was happy because they were opening up into a track meet. And then we came back in the second period, and I said to Ed, how do I say that Quinnipiac should be happy with the game right now? Because they clogged it up, and they locked it down, and they made it a tight checking, and they got away from this open track meet run and gun, but they gave up the only goal. So I said, how do you say that? Remember we had that talk, and you couldn't have been. They lost the lead, but it turned to their kind of game.
It didn't feel like they lost momentum in that. It wasn't like the game. You'd think that maybe tying the game could turn the momentum, a great goal by Fantilli and everything. You're talking about getting behind the defense. Quinnipiac did that very well. They had a 2-on-0. They had a breakaway. They had some good opportunities into the zone getting past Michigan, which is what I expected to see Michigan trying to do with them.
Yeah, I didn't get the odd man rush numbers, but I actually think the odd man rushes significantly favored Quinnipiac in that game. I know both teams had a few, but if I had to just, from watching it naked eye, I would have said the odd man rush was maybe like 7-2 last night.
In both games. That was the thing that scared me about Minnesota, and I'm because I think both games were so similar that you could talk in generalities of the two games. Minnesota had about 2 or 3 2-on-1s in the middle of the second period.
Yeah.
and they didn't capitalize on either. And I don't even know if they've got shots. Because remember, the shots were 9-1. Yep.
Bob Motzko said it. We came down and we didn't even get the shot.
Yep. So they had these and all these odd man rushes, and they weren't getting shots. They weren't getting quality. They were obviously they're a chance, but they're not getting quality out of it. And that's where those games you just look as a coach and you go, oh crap, they're just going to hang around, talking. And I kept bringing back the Denver Mankato game. They never extended leads. They never got farther from last year. And here we are. The right teams won by the right score. The score was right. I mean, I don't know if you could ask for anything more than that was the right game, the right score. Nobody stole anything.
No.
It was right.
So if you're Bob Motzko and Cooley and Nyes and Snuggerud don't get on the scoreboard and your freshman defenseman gets the game winner and extra one.
Empty netters.
Well, yeah, I'm okay. You're right. Empty.
And
Nyes
got his first point. So Nyes, you can't.
Okay. You're right. He got the empty netters. I kind of. The game was over before those, but you make a good point. But them, what we expect to see out of them, we didn't see.
Well, I still think there was a stretch in both games where teams had the puck in the other team's zone for a good 60 seconds. And there was a lot of outside, and this was actually both ways, and not much happened. And I thought Minnesota did a great job when there was some pressure by BU of in their end and hemming them in. They didn't get crazy, and they didn't go outside. And I was sitting with Frank Serratori and Tom Serratori, and we were wondering why they weren't going out a little bit harder and fronting the point men. They were really slow and really methodical in trying to block the shots or just being in lanes. And we actually had a debate about it. We came up with the fact that because they play on an Olympic sheet, maybe that's what they do when they get in panic mode in an Olympic sheet. They just pack it in and they play really tight coverage and don't get extended. And teams did that. There wasn't a lot of extended chances, and we had a lot of odd man rushes and we had a lot of that, but we didn't have a lot of conversion on that other than the breakaway goal by Michigan where he drove wide to the net. But of all those big time chances, nobody converted on them. They converted on pucks off the back of the goalie. They converted on wide shots. They converted on Minnesota's goals were carbon copies with a great screen and a great shot to make it 3-2 and 4-2. So, I mean, there wasn't these. We talked about track meets and odd man rushes, but how many goals were scored like that? Right.
And you bring up something I wanted to ask you about is, we talk about Quinnipiac and slowing the transition and clogging things up. But how about their back checking when Michigan got possession in the Quinnipiac zone?
We talked about reloading, and we talked about back pressure. And I used the word reloading in one of my TV timeout tweets. And I put back checking in the circle. Reloading is you go on the offense and you come back hard through the middle of the ice. It's a term for back checking, basically.
Yeah.
But they made sure they kept people above the puck. And that's another you hear that the new term with the NHL, above the puck, and that's making sure you have a third man high, or if you're running a 1-2-2, you have two men high. So, we've changed all these little comments to being above the puck and reloading, and really it means back checking hard and making sure that you have a third or fourth man high. And I thought Quinnipiac, that's where, Jimmy, you could jump in on that because we talked about it. How many times did Michigan go in on a 2-on-4?
A lot. And every time, even if they got a little possession into the zone, right along the half wall, they were shut off. And then the number of times that became the turnover, maybe it didn't spur an odd man rush, but it certainly gave Quinnipiac a lot of energy to get out of their defensive zone quickly. I mean, I'm in Hockey East most of the year, and I see a lot of teams, Lowell's one, Providence another, Merrimack does it well, where it's just, if you get the puck in the defensive zone, you're off the glass and out, and you find a way to hopefully get it back. That was not what Quinnipiac was doing. They were shutting them down and moving, and they were going north really quickly and successfully. And it wasn't that they were scoring 20 goals off of great rushes. But every time they got up ice, they then got it deep. They then put some pressure on. Their forecheck got to go. I think they surprised Michigan a little bit.
See, one of the things that I think as a coach, and it comes to where you are in the food chain of what kind of players you get. Like it's my job as a coach to be able to tell players, hey, in this scenario, yes, you can try to drive wide and you can beat somebody, but if somebody's going to come and start to close you off or whatever, then you just put the puck behind him and get it in below the goal line. Or like I always tell guys, it's my job if we're up 2-1 and you're on a 1-on-2, that puck better be below the goal line.
200 feet.
But if you're down 2-1 and it's a 1-on-2 and it's late, maybe then you make a little bit more of a chance. And it just seemed like no matter what the scenario was, Michigan was always trying to make chicken salad out of. Everybody knows the line. Everything was always trying to be good, and it didn't need to be. They needed to put pucks below the goal line and play a little bit more simple. But if that's not in your DNA, you can't just all of a sudden make it in your DNA.
I think that Rand Pecknold used the term today that his neutral zone defense frustrates teams.
His?
And I think that he
developed this?
No. The way his team plays frustrates teams. I agree. That's absolutely true. They really do.
And lastly on that, part of that also is possession. And last night after the game, Rand Pecknold said, we did not want Luke Hughes or Adam Fantilli to have the puck, and the best way to keep them from scoring is to really work on possession. He said they should have worked on number 29 a little bit too, but I don't know if the NCAA can't provide the stat. Some of the things like Instat or something can look at time of possession and so forth, but, Quinnipiac would get the puck and they would keep control of the puck. Michigan would get the puck and Quinnipiac would get it away from them.
Because they kept trying to, how many times were there people fanning at pucks to the blue line and then having a blue line all the way down rush to where people are chasing from the backside? And, I mean, it's just, sometimes we make this game too complicated. We try to do too much. Nobody talked, and I saw nobody on social media talk about Logan Cooley trying to do the Michigan when it was 2-2. I mean, because he didn't get it up and on his stick. He tried it, but because I was at that end at that point. Yep. So I think it's sometimes we see the Sports Center and we see the highlights and we see everything, but it doesn't need to be that difficult. And like Quinnipiac just held the puck and they skated and they managed the puck. And
I think you and I in the hotel room yesterday, I said when you have a team like a Quinnipiac, the way that they shut it down, don't you have to simplify the play? You said simplify the play and support the puck.
Yeah.
And that was not what Michigan did.
Well, we're going to take a pause. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the awards that are being doled out. We're still waiting for the announcement of the Hobie Baker Award. It's just minutes away.
I didn't win Coach of the Year either.
No,
I was undefeated.
That's right.
How didn't I win Coach of the Year?
You've been undefeated 2 years in a row.
No, I know.
But, it's not a Lifetime Achievement Award, so you'll have to wait till
next. Coach.
There you go. And we're going to take a break. We'll come back with more. This is USCHO Frozen Four live in Tampa.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Nick Bukestad.
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
David Backus. And Zach Parisi were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
Welcome back to USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa here at Harpoon Harry's. We'll be here tomorrow afternoon, 3:30 to 5:30.
Where everything is an adventure?
Right, where it's not just a restaurant, it's an adventure.
Like, I'm waiting for the adventure in here. It's a nice restaurant, but like I was looking Dave and Buster's type adventure or something.
Well, anyway, I'm Ed Trefzger with Derek Schooley and Jim Connelly, and this part of the podcast episode, we're planning on talking a bit about award winners, and the first one to be announced a bit earlier this afternoon as we await the announcement of the Hobie. The first one announced was the Mike Richter Award, and for the first time, there is a two-time winner. He was not able to be here to receive it because he's playing for the Buffalo Sabres, and that's Devin Levi. Now, you've seen quite a bit of Levi in Hockey East, Jim. I mean, he's one of these generational type or once every decade type goaltenders, although they seem to be becoming more and more frequent. But, Northeastern didn't make the NCAAs this year, but it wasn't because of Devin Levi.
No, and I think that, they had a lot of injuries through the middle of the season, and he struggled at times because of that as D. They had three freshman D carrying almost all the minutes for a little while there, and that was a tough stretch for Northeastern. But listen, when he was playing well, and we saw Drew Comesso last night for Boston University, and I think that he didn't have the same numbers as Levi, but both of them really impressive goaltenders. Both former Olympic goaltenders. I think that Levi deserves every amount of recognition he can get. He's a fantastic goalie. I'm sure that this will maybe give a little bit of maybe a chip on the shoulder for Yanni Peretz as he goes into the national title game tomorrow, because I'm sure that Quinnipiac and Rand Pecknold and Yanni probably feel like he had something that he deserved as well. He ends up as an All-American, but, it's one of those things that you want that Richter Award. And I'm sure that 2 years in a row, I'm sure Rand Pecknold feels like his numbers were good enough and he didn't get it.
How much of it comes from Levi having to be pretty acrobatic in his style?
Oh, that's a good question. He is, and he moves quick, and he can get around. I still think he's somewhat economic in his motions, but compared to Perez, he certainly has a little bit extra flair to his game, maybe we'll say.
Yeah, I mean, as a 6-foot goalie compared to, we watched Eric Portillo last night, and at 6'6", he fills up a lot of space. Levi, I think he's going to be great for the Sabres, but at 6 foot, he's not the prototypical NHL goalie they're looking for these days.
He's not. I mean, you'll tell us, Schools. I mean, you don't even see guys that size typically recruited. But everybody knew when Levi was coming into Northeastern what he was. That he wasn't just some guy that's 6 foot and you didn't think he could do it. Everybody knew he was going to be one of the best goaltenders in the country. And now, back-to-back Mike Richter awards certainly. Puts a little bit of credence in what the predictions were.
Well, speaking of awards, this one coming in just shortly ago, the Tim Taylor Award is the nation's top rookie. This is no surprise. Michigan freshman Adam Fantilli.
Well, is it a surprise or not? Because I think that Logan Cooley could have won that award.
Well, that's true.
Award as well, and you had some really solid freshmen too. Both of them were Hobie Baker finalists, and it would be funny if you see the vote get split here. Fantilli wins the Tim Taylor, and maybe Cooley wins the Hobie Baker. But,
wow.
We saw it last year where Levi won the Richter, and Dryden McKay won the Hobie. So you never know how that split can go, but Fantilli had a fantastic year. I mean, you saw him last night, but if you watched it, I only got to see him on tape before last night, and he's just so dynamic.
Yeah, he does things, and everybody was all over this character thing because he took a couple majors. You want people to play hard. You want to compete.
You do.
You can always tame a tiger, but you can't paint stripes on a cat. That it's
Is that another Frank Serratore?
Yes.
That feels
You,
like one.
you know what, though?
Actually, but it was a different type. It was of the cat.
The amount that people were talking about the majors and character for the Hobie has been completely blown out of proportion by somebody who wasn't even on the call.
Completely. You're right about that. And it's, I don't know.
Anyway.
The way that the Hobie is handled, I served on the committee for 6 years, the three most recent and three, back in the mid-2000s, I think. And we always had discussions amongst the committee. I would call certain people on the committee afterwards. I guess the last 3 years we had it, but the first go around we didn't even have Twitter, so there wasn't going to be a big tweet storm of battling about who should win, who should not, why should you not include people. There's been conversations about that before. I look at Matt Gilroy. I remember being on the committee when Gilroy won it, and everybody's praising Gilroy, and then an NHL scout jumps on and says, y'all are saying he came back because he wanted to play with his brother. He came back because he wanted to go to free agency, and he kind of ripped him a new one for that. I didn't put too much into that, but you have people that will say those things about certain players.
I think in awards, you can, no matter what awards, whether it's league awards, whether it's, you can, if the narrative's there, you can go any direction.
Sure.
So I go back to Zach Lynch for us, was Player of the Year in Atlantic Hockey. I go back, he's Player of the Year in Atlantic Hockey, and then he, all of a sudden, some people didn't like him, his chirping and all that kind of stuff, and next year he's not even an All-American because of some of that stuff. So I think you can do that. I know you got breaking news right now.
Well, the Rookie of the Year is also the Hobie Baker Award recipient, and then that is Michigan's Adam Fantilli.
Listen, any of the three finalists were great candidates.
But that was, I think, for the Minnesota the kids, wasn't that they were going to split the vote?
It happens.
Yeah.
It certainly happens. I worry that they were going to split the vote into the top three. I thought that it might be difficult to have two of them in the hat trick. But
well, the way the voting goes, and you remember this from your time serving, this is my first year of a second 3-year term. We're asked to vote for our top five.
Right.
Which are then ranked in the voting. And I'm not going to disclose my order, but the 5 players I had on there were Fantilli, Cooley, Nyes, Hudson, and Poland. I think any one of those 5, you could make a great case for being the one to win the award.
I will tell you, I'm just happening to be looking at the list of AHCA Division I men's All-Americans. The player that you just mentioned that did not make first-team All-American was Jason Poland. That one shocks me. I really am surprised by that. But I guess that's what happens when you have Cooley, Fantilli, and Nyes.
Right.
All guys who got into that Hobie hat trick ahead of you. That's a difficult situation. I mean, listen, on an average year, Jason Poland might have won the Hobie Baker Award, and now he's not even a first-team All-America.
Well, the funny thing is
he's getting paid, though. He's okay.
He is getting paid.
the funny thing about it is you have some years where it's pretty obvious. Like you go back to Johnny Gaudreau. There was no question he was going to be the Hobie winner. You go back to you go through Kel McCarr. That was my final year on my previous term on the committee. I don't think there was much of a question that he was going to be the Hobie winner that year. This year, you just had a lot of really worthy candidates, and it's hard for anybody to argue that Adam Fantilli shouldn't be it, especially because people have been overblowing this bit about 2 5-minute majors, and now he's your Hobie winner. So maybe just wait till it's announced, or just crawl away quietly. I don't know.
I think the committee got this one right.
I agree.
Fantastic player. I do want to kind of just highlight some of the All-Americans. I'll actually read off the first team's East. Goaltender is Devin Levi. Defenseman, Lane Hudson from Boston University. Henry Thrun from Harvard. That's a nice recognition for him.
I saw his first NHL game in person.
Did you?
I was in San Jose at the Nationals with my son, and we went to the Sharks Golden Knights game, and he did not look out of place. He had 2 assists on the first 2 goals. It was good.
Fantastic player. on the forward side, East, Sean Farrell from Harvard. Colin Graff from Quinnipiac. He was up on the podium today. And Aiden McDonough from Northeastern University. Looking at that list, I really feel like they got that right.
I don't have any problems with any of that. Even in the West first team, Poland doesn't make it, but
that's just the fourth of four.
Yeah.
You don't put 4 forwards on your All-America team. That's the reason. But I'll go into the West. The goaltender is Blake Patella from Michigan Tech. The rest of the players were in this Frozen Four. Brock Faber from Minnesota on defense. Luke Hughes from Michigan. Forwards, we just mentioned it, Cooley, Fantilli, and Nyes. Jesus, I'd love to put that team out there someday. That would be an unbelievable lineup to have for any NHL team, and I guarantee that all of these players. Patella may be a longer road. Just goaltenders always have that road, but fantastic.
Imagine if they put together an all-star game with those two squads, East versus West. Maybe you have to add a third team, but wouldn't that be something to watch?
Yeah, certainly. I'll go into second team. The goaltender in the East, Yanni Peretz. Again, here in the Frozen Four. Another guy in the Frozen Four, Zach Metzer from Quinnipiac on defense. Sam Malinsky from Cornell. I saw him in the regional, really good player. Matt Brown, undersized forward from Boston University, had a great season. Glad to see him get some recognition. Matthew Coronado from Harvard. I mean, Harvard's really well represented on here. 3 All-Americans in the same year. That's quite impressive. And Alex Jeffries from Merrimack. He had a fantastic year, and Andy is coming back to Merrimack next season.
Yeah, and I would say outside of Hockey East circles, maybe not as big a name as most of the others you mentioned.
No, I agree with you, but people in Hockey East know him. He had a dominant year, and I have a lot of pride. I look at some of these guys that come back for their senior year. I'm sure that Scott Borwick's happy to have him back. But again, not too many surprises for me. Matt Brown might possibly be a surprise, but he had fantastic numbers this year. Got to his 100th career point during the regional. So, and his team gets to the Frozen Four. That helps. On the west side, second team, Ryan Bischel from University of Notre Dame. Mike Benning, the junior defenseman from Denver. Jake Livingston from Minnesota State on defense. The forward position, Carter Mazer from Denver. Jason Poland, we mentioned that already. And Massimo Rizzo from Denver. So Denver with 3 second-team All-Americans. Large representation from certain schools. You look at Harvard, BU, Minnesota, Michigan, Denver, and we can probably throw in Quinnipiac with 3 players as well. That's 5 schools basically, take up a lot of your spots in these 2 All-America teams.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody that I think got right off the top that may have got a little bit shorted on this.
Yeah,
I don't know if I think they've pretty much got it right without actually me doing a deep dive and going. You can make an argument here.
You'd have to go almost to the league awards to try to find a way.
Yeah, nobody from Atlantic Hockey this year.
No. I don't know. I mean, you guys see more of it than I do. I don't know if there was a player there.
Who was the player of the year in the league this year?
RAT's Carter Wilkie, sophomore.
Yeah, he could have been there. He had a little rough stretch towards the end. He didn't score a lot towards it, so maybe not. Usually the Atlantic Hockey gets 1 or 2 sometimes, but no, I don't know if you can argue much. The big question is, was Luke Hughes leaving today to go to the Hobie with the rest of the team like they were? Or was he leaving with his bag to go to New Jersey?
I'm sure you can get a direct flight from Tampa to Newark.
It's not hard. Plenty of them.
Yeah, I don't know, because Michigan, credit to Michigan, they paid for the extra night of hotel, and they paid for an extra day of food and extra day of charter out of their own pockets for the whole team to stay and watch Fantilli at the Hobie ceremony. So, Michigan got something out of the weekend.
A couple other awards that were announced. Gabby Hughes, the winner of the Humanitarian Award, second time that she has been a finalist, and congratulations to her. Unfortunately, she's up in Ontario playing in the Women's World Juniors and was not able to be here for this.
World Championships,
rather. Yeah, so she was not able to be here for this. And then also Noah Wilson from Army, winner of the Derek Hines Unsung Hero Award.
What really, to see the quality of the character of the people in this award, you really have to read what the award means. Read what the humanitarian means. Read what the Derek Hines Award means. And then it tells you a lot about the character of those people. We've had some nominations for the humanitarian award. I think it's more of just trying to divide through a whole bunch of really good character people. I don't think you could say this guy's so much better than this person, because they're all doing world-class things. To be a candidate for these awards is something really special. So congratulations to those two, because those are the best of the best in good people awards.
So those are the awards. The other award that was doled out well before this was the Spencer Penrose Award, the first award of that kind for Minnesota in 70 years since John Mariucci won it in 1953, and that was Bob Motzko.
Yeah, you know what? Bob's done a great job. Excited for him yesterday. I think, obviously, everybody knows that I worked for Frank. Him and Frank have grown up together. He worked for Frank as well. Really good friends with him. We had a four-person hug last night between me, Frank, and Bob and Tom. But excited for Bob, and I told you yesterday when I did my picks. I picked Michigan with my head, but I wanted to go with my heart because of Mike Corbett.
You did say that.
I should have probably went with my heart more, and I think there's some really good coaches that are. If you're a finalist with Spencer Penrose, another one that it says that you've done a really good job and you're a good coach. But for Bob to finally get it, congratulations to him.
I've got to ask you, because I think I got a quick glimpse of it one time. How much fun is it with both Tommy and Frank Serratori there? One time, this was in Pittsburgh, the first time you were the host for the Frozen Four. Somewhere along the line in the evening on that Saturday night, I ended up with a bunch of people in a large hotel suite, or it might have been the suite that you had there. And in two armchairs, there's Tommy and Frank, and everybody's just sitting there listening to the two of them hold court.
Well, you saw him in the press box last night. It was like royalty came through.
Yes.
And they were holding court and talking I was trying to – they wanted to go down and like I said, there wasn't a seat for me in the press box, so I'd have to run all the way up to do the in-between periods hit. But I want to get back down to watch the game and the club seats, and we're waiting for Frank. Frank's hugging everybody. It's like it's almost like the Italian mafia. The Iron Range Mafia.
They
let's
are
put it that way.
Both of them are a lot of fun to be around and listen to. I gotta. We know the elevator takes about 7 years to get from the bottom to the top. That's
my biggest complaint about this whole thing.
Well, and part of it,
it's a freight elevator. We're riding in garbage.
Yeah, I mean, half the elevator is taken up with dumpsters while we're trying to get up and down.
I'm with Kevin Warren who's like the Big Ten outgoing commissioner, who's like going to run the Bears for $9 million a year, and he's standing next to this big garbage container, and he's looking at me like, this is what gets you to the press box?
I mean, listen, there are some people that maybe belong in the garbage container, so I mean, it's okay. We know our roles in life.
So if I stand next to that, you got to promise you're not going to push me in.
I will do my best.
I was talking to our friend Jess Myers from the Rink Live. He said, hey, if I have to ride in the dumpster to get up the elevator faster, I will.
Yep.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk a little bit about the championship game tomorrow, including the point spread and over-under, which is should be very interesting, and maybe telling where the hive mind, the crowdsourcing is on the game. This is USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa, and we'll be right back.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Johnny Gaudreau.
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
Joe Pavelski. And Shane Gostisbehere were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
We're back with USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa, the Friday edition. It's the awards day. It's the day off in between. It's the practice day for the two teams in the championship, and that is Minnesota and Quinnipiac. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley.
You remember our names?
Sometimes you get just that mental block. But anyway, one of the things we want to talk about is looking forward to tomorrow's game, and part of that is what happens with DraftKings and what they put together as the money line and the over-under for this game. And we'll preface this by saying none of us bet on college hockey. We just kind of look at it to give you an analysis if you decide to. And what is it that they say, bet with your head, not over it?
That is exactly what they say.
In fact, some of those online betting places even have things set up now where you can set a maximum amount to guard that. So
daily, weekly, monthly.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah. So, have fun with it, but don't get yourself in trouble. But anyway, part of those lines, Jim, really have to do with what bettors and odds makers think the game is going to turn out. And actually, we've seen the money line move a little bit. Quinnipiac is into the game at plus 150, and as we explained yesterday, that means if you bet $100, you would win $150 if they win. Minnesota minus 185, you would have to wager 185 to win that 100. And then the over-under on the game is 6.5.
Yeah, and that is actually shaded heavy toward Minnesota heavy toward the under, I should say. So you have to wager a little bit more on the under. So I think the books are trying to hedge right there. I think that it's probably going to go under, but they're still giving it a chance. Listen, this money line moved a significant amount today. From this morning when we arrived at the arena, it was I guess this was last night when we were sitting after the game. It was plus 130. It opened plus 130 on Quinnipiac, minus 165 on Minnesota. It has moved 20 points in either direction. That's not insignificant. The only way you can do that is to have Minnesota take a lot of money. So the people that are gambling on this game, people that are betting, they're putting a lot on Minnesota. I know, Schools, you said last night, you said I don't gamble, but I'd probably have to put my money on Minnesota. I think I said
I bet my house.
I think you said you'd bet your house. I was trying to be a little conservative. I
can't gamble. I can't gamble. It's an NCAA violation.
Exactly. So you would not do that anyways. But
just need to preface that real quick.
It is a lot of people have put some movable money on Minnesota already. I don't know if it'll come back. Quinnipiac is in a gambling state, Connecticut, but you have to place your bets in person. So don't know that they will have a lot of pull either at Mohegan Sun or at Foxwoods. But regardless, and this is just DraftKings line. I have not gone through every casino to see who has lines and all of that sort of stuff. We use DraftKings throughout the entire season. But that's not an insignificant move. People really do feel strongly about Minnesota.
I was going to ask you touched on it a little bit. Maybe it's a little harder to bet in Connecticut, so maybe that skews things a bit. We don't really know, because we're not the gaming companies. We really don't know where that betting is coming from. Do you suspect that most of the betting on this game is coming from people who know college hockey, or are there people who will take a flyer on that because they like Minnesota?
Well, I'll tell you, living in a state in Massachusetts that just approved online gambling using sports apps to make your bets, I have seen, I just happened to be out at a bar for the first day of March Madness, the basketball tournament, and the number of people who I don't think they knew diddly squat about the games that were just betting just because they were like, hey, I've got my $25 free bets that I have to make and all of those things. So I don't know. I used to think that most of the people that bet on the Frozen Four were pretty sharp gamblers or really passionate fans. I think there might be some people just taking some flyers in there now. There's more people making these wagers every day, so I think there might be a few more flyers in there.
We talk about it all during the season on our USCHO Edge podcast about something that's a good value. And it seems like Quinnipiac is in that category of a good value on this.
Right now, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is a team that's number 2 in the nation, and you can, basically make 1.5 to the dollar. 150 plus 150 is really good for a team that is the second best team in the nation. We're not going to make our picks till tomorrow, but whatever I pick go against me. I don't think I made a correct pick at a Frozen Four.
We were good
years.
yesterday. Ed and I were 50%.
Yeah, well, not a lot of people are 100% these days, and I'm at 0% for a long time.
The guy from the Boston Globe he went 0 for yesterday. He went Eastern bias.
Well, Quinnipiac won.
Yeah.
So he's 50%.
Didn't he go Michigan?
No, he went total Eastern bias.
Okay.
Jess Myers went Western bias, so he went 50-50. But we'll make our picks on this one. This one is, I can make a case for both teams. Now that we just watched Quinnipiac shut down Michigan, I can see a route that they could shut down Minnesota. Do you agree?
Yeah.
There are those unexpected things that can come in there. I don't expect both of these teams. I think you said, was it you, Jim, or was it someone else I was talking to that said Quinnipiac only took one major all season?
Rand said that today in the press conference, and he was right. They are the least penalized team. I think it was 5.8 minutes worth of penalties a game. That's basically 3 minors.
You got to base. They're gonna have to stay out of the penalty box. They're gonna have to manage the puck. They're gonna have to do what they did to Michigan. And I still think that Minnesota's D was better than Michigan's D in moving pucks up the ice. I mean, you're talking a 7th defenseman yesterday gets 2 goals.
Yeah, we talked about that last night. Yeah.
7th defenseman. I don't know how. Like, they've got so many weapons.
Yeah,
There's just so much depth to this team, and you always say you win from the goal line. We don't give Justin Close enough credit, and the D from 1 to 7. I mean, he'd be a 7. The 7th D would be like a 2 on every other team here.
That's correct. I mean, it was Middlestat last night. He scores 2 goals. When he's in. We heard Bob Mosko talk after the game about how elite he considers Middlestat, and he has since day one. He said sometimes you just see players come in, you use your eyes, and you know what you have. And he talked about making a call about World Juniors to make sure that he was on the radar of Team USA.
And speaking of Justin Close, our own Paula Weston from USCHO had a really nice feature story about him today. Great things to say about him from his head coach, Bob Motzko, and also from some of the players in that team, and some comments from somebody who doesn't really like to talk about himself, Justin Close. And Bob Motzko said in there, expect him back next season.
I have to tell you, when I was doing my research today on my game preview for tomorrow, I didn't know exactly where I knew where Yanni Peretz ranked. He was in the top of every statistical category, goaltending-wise. But Justin Close, 4th in most categories, including goals against average. I mean, so he's – I know he plays on a fantastic team, but he's a fantastic goaltender.
I think the reason why we keep talking about, you bring all the DraftKings lineup. I joked I bet my house. I wouldn't bet my house. But you got the goaltender. If you went – just like the matchup we talked with Jess yesterday, Jess Myers, Jeff as you called him. Goalie, Quinnipiac favors. Defense, Minnesota favored. Forwards, Minnesota favored. I mean, where do you go from there? And then it's special teams. Who's going to get more power plays, all that kind of stuff.
And I want to note one thing, too. Tomorrow's crew, and I'm very close with the heads of officiating of the leagues and with Frank Cole, who runs the whole officiating for the NCAA. So I want to preface this and say I'm not criticizing any officials. I do think that the NCHC officials that will call tomorrow's game will be a little looser than the ECAC crew that Minnesota had yesterday, where they got 7 power plays. And I'm not saying that they weren't penalties, but sometimes you see this time of year those really close borderline calls that get let go. They weren't let go as often yesterday. I expect those. Listen, I think if each team had 1 power play, maybe 2, that's probably where I'd expect this game to go. You're talking Quinnipiac's the least penalized team in the country. Minnesota's the third least penalized team in the country. Minnesota State, I believe, is in between them. But these teams don't take a lot of penalties, so I don't expect special teams to factor in as much as we would think it could.
But we talk they still haven't won a game because they're forwards. Like at least yesterday's game, their forwards still haven't put it all together yet in Minnesota.
Right.
I mean, so you got. I mean, granted, they're going to have a tough time getting the net, but most of the goals except the empty nets were scored by defensemen.
Right. Three of the
four defensemen.
And all from the same spot on the ice.
Yeah. So with all those positions that you talked about in special teams, Bob Motzko brought this up today too, is you got to not make mistakes. Errors in execution are going to be key for both teams tomorrow too, right?
It'll become, I think, experience as well. May pull a little bit into it from last year. Mm-hmm. Quinnipiac's been around. Yeah, they got to the regional final, but I just think the big stage right now, and I think it's a home game for Minnesota.
It feels it. It does feel.
Does it not? Everywhere you walk around here, it's maroon and gold. I mean, I learned how to spell Minnesota again last night.
Right.
I mean, after every goal.
Yep.
I mean, my son told me after they beat us 7-3 in the NCAA tournament, I know how to spell Minnesota now, Dad. I'm like, great, thanks, bud. But so I really believe that there's a lot of intangibles that look towards Minnesota, but we have a sixth time for the Gophers, or we have a 23rd national champion.
Does it when you talk about experience? Does it matter that the Gophers players haven't been to the finals before?
No, because I think that they've now played. The older guys now have played. They played last year in the Frozen Four in the big stage. They felt what it means like to lose. I think sometimes you have to lose to win.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've said that many times. You know, it's one of those things.
I think we should just shut the show down right after.
Well, we're really just about out of time. I do want to preview what we've got coming up tomorrow. We've had great guests all week, and tomorrow is no exception. We're going to start out the show tomorrow at 3:30 or just slightly after with a longtime college hockey coach and the commissioner of the CCHA, Don Lucia. We look forward to that. Dave Fisher, who's the senior director of communications with USA Hockey and also the moderator of all the press conferences here, and a good friend of everybody who's been a regular in the media at these. He'll join us. Also, outgoing retiring ECAC Commissioner Steve Hagwell. And, you know, when you talk to some of the other commissioners, they always kind of point to him, and this is not a word they use, but they point to him as sort of the sage of that group, the one who listens and thinks about stuff, and when he speaks, he has something really relevant and important to say. So we'll talk to him. A great legend, Red Berenson, longtime head coach at University of Michigan, and now the special advisor for hockey for the Big Ten. Steve Piotrowski is going to be with us. He was the longtime secretary of the Rules Committee. He's the supervisor of officials for the Big Ten. He knows the rule book inside and out, but even better, he knows all the mechanics of being a referee. And then we'll wrap it up with a preview of the championship game, and that's where we'll all pick the wrong team.
But you know what?
Well, we need to pick separate so somebody actually gets it right this year.
There you go.
Well, we're accused, if you do read some of the comments, we are accused of having a massive Eastern bias towards all of us.
Well,
okay.
You know what? There's a massive Western chip on the shoulder that we've seen for years. Always accusing Eastern bias of the website, which is headquartered in Minneapolis, by the way.
I'm more kind of a central. Wouldn't you think?
That's right. Well, you're in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever.
You're actually closer to more of the Western teams than you are the Eastern teams.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
More of the CCHA for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
sure. What do you like? So, like, do the UP teams have a northern bias?
There you go. Arizona State has a southern bias.
Very
Southwestern bias.
Yeah. So that's what's coming up tomorrow, 3:30 to 5:30, live again from Harpoon Harry's in Tampa. Final thoughts?
It'll be our last adventure.
That's right. On to the next adventure. Final thoughts before we wrap up today.
Well, it's been a really fun week here, and obviously the games yesterday were just fantastic, I thought, and I'm looking forward to one last game, and hopefully somebody has one shining moment in that game.
Are you going to start out the podcast tomorrow by saying hello, friends?
Hello, friends.
I'm excited about this. I've been excited this whole weekend. I think that we're at this point right now where we've got the two best. What was it since 1993?
So this is the first time that we have had the top Western team and top Eastern team since Maine played Lake State in '93. We did have the number 1 and number 2 overall seeds in Chicago in 2017, but those were two Western teams.
A lot of secondary tickets on the market right now.
What's the price tag?
They're low right now.
I bet they
110.
All right, so if you're in the Tampa area, come on and see some great hockey tomorrow.
I wonder if those are red and... You know what? Harpoon Harry's was very unlucky yesterday. We had BU and Michigan here. Now we have nobody here.
Right?
So it'll be a great venue tomorrow to come down and listen to some great college hockey talk.
And we got the party here.
There you go. And we'll wrap things up now for USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa. For Derek Schooley, for Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll see you tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time.